Hey guys, how's it going? Connor here today at etrailer.com. We're going to be taking a look at the Roadmaster Automatic Battery Disconnect here for our 2020 Chevy Silverado 1500. So the battery disconnect is going to be one of the needed components to flat tow our vehicle here. Keep in mind, it's not required for every vehicle, but it is here for our Chevy Silverado 1500, which is why we have it installed. So according to our owner's manual, when our vehicle is in tow behind a motorhome, the battery needs to be disconnected so we don't have to worry about any electrical draw from our other components, which would then in turn kill the battery, and then we'd have to jump it when we arrive to our destination. So how this works is, we would insert our key into the ignition here. And right now, our switch in our system is disengaged, so we should be able to start our truck, turn on all the lights, everything would appear as normal. We can take off, detach it from the motorhome, and drive around town if we like. However, when we are ready to hook back up to the motorhome and continue our travels, what we would do is, we would come to the side here, or wherever we have our switch installed, we would simply press that button. And once we do that, we should hear the solenoid click over, and that should in turn cut all the dash lights, which would signify that our battery has been disconnected. And as we can see, it's done just that. And if we wanted to double check, we could even turn the key back over. As we can see, none of our dash lights are coming on, so our system is in fact engaged, and our battery is no longer connected with the vehicle. So although it is required to disconnect your vehicle while towing, this particular battery disconnect isn't required per se. However, this kit here is going to be a huge convenience factor. Normally, we would have to go open the hood of our vehicle here, locate the battery. We'd have to use some tools to unbolt the cables, which in all honesty is going to be a huge hassle. Definitely not something you're going to want to do each time you want to take your vehicle out or set it up in tow mode. Which is why this Roadmaster kit is an excellent option here for this vehicle, because it's again just a huge convenience factor for you to have. To start our installation, we need to locate the vehicle's 12-volt battery, which is going to be over here on the passenger side. As you can see here, we have this nice plastic cover, which needs to go ahead and come off. So we're going to have two tabs on the side here, which we need to depress, then lift straight off. So now that we have the cover off, we need to go ahead and remove this nut here using our 13mm socket. Once that's off, we can go ahead and set this aside. And then we're going to remove this sort of ring terminal here. Just pull that straight off. Just set this aside, make sure it doesn't come into contact with any other circuit. And what we need to do next is we actually need to bend this plate up to clear the stud here. So we're just going to bend it just like so, just enough to get our little mechanism out of here. Then we're actually going to need to take a 10mm socket, and we're going to remove this post around the positive battery terminal. We shouldn't have to take this one all the way off. Once we get it loose, we should just be able to remove the post here. Yep, just like that. So now the next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and trim this excess plate off here, just using some tin snips. We're just going to trim right here. It's sort of the bend mark. But before we do that, we actually want to place some electrical tape, some sort of cap or cover on the positive battery posts so we don't have any cross connections here. So our next step here is we need to take our solenoid. We need to find a place to mount this on the vehicle. Now there's a couple common options for that. Usually we can mount them to the edge of our firewall here that are up and out of the way. However, I don't quite like the look of that. I've actually found a better spot here along the core support. So we're going to go ahead and just attach it there. I've actually went ahead and turned the cables down a little bit. Normally they come straight down. I want them angled this way a little bit so we have a little bit of a clearance issue right there. So all I did was I took a wrench and held the bronze nut there, and I loosened the top one, shifted the cable back down, and then tightened the nut back up. So now we're going to go ahead and place the battery disconnect in the position we want to install it. The kit actually comes with some self-tapping screws. That way we can mount it on the vehicle here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our white wire here. This actually needs to go to a ground. There's a good spot in between our jump start post here, the battery terminal tie down. So we're going to go ahead and use that. We're not going to need near this much wire, so I'm just going to trim it a little bit. And then with our kit, we are going to get a ring terminal and a self-tapping screw that we can use to attach this ground. Now we're going to take our cable here that's labeled battery post. We're going to feed it through this section here, and we're also going to attach that to the stud on the end of our clamp that goes around the positive battery post. Then we're going to follow this up with a star washer here, and then our factory flange nut. We can go ahead and tighten this down with our 13 millimeter socket and ratchet. Now we're going to take our cable labeled battery cable. We're again going to insert it in this little slot here. Then we're going to place it over the plate. We're going to take our hex bolt, come underneath, insert that through. We're going to follow this up with a star washer, and then our nut. We're going to need two 13 millimeter tools to tighten this down. And then we can go ahead and bend our plate back down. And we can reinstall our cover at this time. So before we reinstall our battery cover here, we actually had to trim just a little bit of the plastic here, which was hitting on the nut that we had to remove, or that we had to move the cable in order to clear earlier. So we just need to make a slight cut here with some diagonal cutters or some tin snips. We don't have to take out very much material at all, just a little tab there. Now we can reinstall the cover. We shouldn't have too many issues. Just like that. Now the next thing we're going to do, with our kit, we're going to have two sections of wire loom here. These need to go over both of the red cables that go from our solenoid to the battery here. So we're just going to slide these over now. If we have any excess, we can just easily trim that off. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be running this gray jacketed wire to a spot inside the vehicle and to our switch here. Now our switch is basically going to function as the on-off switch for our battery disconnect. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and find a suitable place to mount this switch, run the wire over there, and then we'll show you the route we took. So in my experience, the best place to mount the switch is usually going to be on this interior panel here, because it's going to be covered when the door is shut, so we don't have to worry about any accidental connections or disconnections. So what we're going to do is we're just going to remove this panel. We've already got it popped off now, but essentially there's just going to be some clips here at the top and bottom that are just going to pull straight out. Then we're going to drill a hole there so we can mount our switch just like so. Now you can see where we ran our gray wire that goes to the switch. We have a couple ring clamps here that are attached to this part of the support here with some self-tapping screws just to keep it up out of the way so we don't have to worry about it dangling down. Then we can follow that all the way over to the driver's side here. We went behind the coolant reservoir and we came down here. Keep in mind, we're using some wire loom, which doesn't come with your kit. You can purchase this here through etrailer.com. It just makes for a cleaner finished install look. We routed the wire loom with our wire down through here. And there's a grommet. We'll probably be able to show you underneath, but it's going to be the grommet that our hood latch mechanism you see I'm holding here. If we want to trace that, there's a grommet through the firewall that goes through that we went ahead and just used a pull wire. We took a piece of airline tubing. We essentially just poked it through that grommet, pulled it through the other side. Then we taped our wire to that airline tubing and then pulled it through. Now if we come inside the vehicle here, if we take a look underneath the dash, you should be able to see the grommet that we used, and then we have our gray wire poking through. So now that we have our gray wire inside the vehicle here, we're going to go ahead and route it up in between the body of the vehicle and our dash here, because we're going to be mounting the switch somewhere in this area. So we have our panel here that we took off the side of the vehicle that we're going to drill into to mount our switch. Now I've already went ahead and test fit the panel because we are going to need some space behind this in the location that we mount our switch so we have proper clearance. So I went ahead and made a note here, and we have it marked on the back, but right below this fuse box indication, there's going to be a perfect little location there that we can drill our 5/8 inch diameter hole there, and we're going to have clearance on the back. I went ahead and just marked that here with a yellow paint mark. So we're going to go ahead and drill that out to 5/8 of an inch. We're going to test fit our switch and then test fit the panel as well with our switch mounted. So as you can see here, we have our switch pushed into position here. We're going to come around back here and then install our jam nut. Then we can make our final test fits. Just going to tighten this by hand by now. Should be all that's needed. Now we're going to just mock up our panel back on the vehicle, shut the door to make sure we don't have any interference issues. Now that we've made our test fits, we can go ahead and wire up our switch and ensure everything's working. So we already went ahead and trimmed some of our excess wire off. We've also stripped back some of this gray jacket here. So the next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to have to strip about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch of jacket off each of our red and black wires. And then we can go ahead and attach them to the switch here. We're going to need a small Phillips head screwdriver in order to loosen these terminals here so we can insert our wires. We don't want to take the screws all the way out because we risk losing them. It does not matter also which wire goes in which terminal, so we don't have to worry about that. What we're going to do is we're going to take one of the wires, insert it into one of the terminals there, take the other one, and obviously just place that in the corresponding terminal. We'll tighten both of these down to hold them in place, and then we'll come back and tighten our jam nut as well so we don't have to worry about the switch turning on us like it's doing now. So now we're going to place our panel back up into position on the vehicle. Don't forget, we still need to insert a fuse, and then we can test our switch to ensure everything's working. Place the cover back over, and now we're ready to test everything. So to test our battery disconnect, we want to take our key and insert it into the ignition and put it in the accessory position. Now that we have all our dash lights turned on, we know right now the switch is in the off position. Now if we were to go ahead and press this button, all our dash lights should cut off, which would signify that we have cut power to the vehicle's battery. And right away we can hear the solenoid click and all our dash lights shut off. So we know everything's working properly. And that's going to do it for our look and installation of the Roadmaster Automatic Battery Disconnect here for our 2020 Chevy Silverado 1500.